92% corrupt. So, Luke, to your point, the data is absolutely, irrefutably corrupt. They don't even know what the truth is. They can't get there.
Travis Spencer says he doesn't trust his appraisal board. That's why he brought 2 cameras to his protest hearing, and he says he's glad he did. He was interrupted by an appraisal board chair.
They stopped my meeting when I still have 2 minutes, violation of the law. They kicked me out of the building.
And that's when this happened.
Sir, you think it's okay to bully? Okay, he just grabbed me. This man just assaulted me.
I did not assault you.
He just assaulted me. I have it on camera.
Property tax fraud is rife across Canada, and I have the honor of having with me somebody who's actually quite famous right now and has been on the news, Travis, and also Mitch Vexler. Absolutely fantastic stuff that both of you guys do. How are you doing today?
Well, it's a very interesting time with all the evidence that's been floated up. It just doesn't stop. You'd be shocked, but we're getting an email from across the United States almost round the clock every 15 to 20 minutes. And the evidence just keeps mounting. So on my website and on Jeff Mashburn's site and on Travis's site, almost daily, we're posting articles and more evidence for people to go and look at. It's all for free. And it helps everybody understand what is happening to their property and to their lives by virtue of the fraud that's being created against them. So shall we live in interesting times?
We certainly do. And Travis, just tell everybody a little about what's happened with you recently, because I saw your episode where you went to protest your property taxes at an ARB hearing.
Yes, sir, you think it's okay to bully? I need police because I was just assaulted by the chairman.
So what we did, I issued him a citation for the assault.
It's actually a similar process in Canada too. And what happened with that?
Well, first, thank you for allowing me to speak to your viewers. And I'm doing really well myself because we get to talk to a new set of people, try to help them understand what's going on under the hood. Now, as far as my, ARB hearing, I went into what's called the Central Appraisal District to legally protest the value of my house. Now, when I got there to present my case, one of the things that was important to me, because the ARB board, Appraisal Review Board, is supposed to be on the side of the homeowner. So they're supposed to be between the homeowner and the Central Appraisal District fighting for our rights. And what I attempted to do was to bring to their attention the gross negligence that's happening as a result of their fraudulent software. So their software essentially is backing in the budgets from the municipalities into the value of our houses. And what that's doing, Luke, is it's causing some, not all, but many houses to be overassessed and overtaxed. Some houses by 6 digits, so over $100,000. Now, when I started to present, and it took me 5 times for them to finally let me finish, meaning 5 different hearings, when I started to talk about and to try to prove to them that their software was full of inconsistencies, it wasn't fair, it wasn't uniform, you see what happened. They started to bully me, they started to harass me,
I want to give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, Printify. If you've ever wanted to start your own online store without the hassle of inventory, packaging, and shipping, then Printify can make that all easy. They let you design custom products from t-shirts to hoodies to mugs to phone cases. And they handle everything from printing to delivery. And that means you can focus on your business while Printify takes care of the heavy lifting. In fact, I want to show you just how easy it is to create your own product. So I'm here in my account and I'm going to be designing a hat. And the great thing here is you can also pick which country that you're shipping from. So obviously with all the tariffs and everything, you don't want to be dealing with the hassle of that. So they're taking care of everything. So you can ship from Canada, the US, UK, all different countries. So if I go here and I start designing, and I can basically pick which type of color I want, if I want it black, for instance, and then I can upload my own design here, and then boom, it's uploaded. And this is something I'm actually going to be releasing. Going to say never trust politicians. So if you're interested in a hat like that or a t-shirt, then let me know. But I just simply hit this save product here. It's as easy as that, and then basically it will show what your product is going to look like here. And then I've also got this cotton t-shirt that I'm designing, which is going to be saying saying the exact same thing. Never trust politicians. It's really easy to use this to create products and sell online using Printify, and I'm going to be using them as well. I want to thank Printify for sponsoring today's video. There is a link in the description and the pinned comment. Please check them out.
I mean, you see what happened. They started to bully me. They started to harass me. They cut me off of my legal time to present and essentially kicked me out of the building, assaulted me right there, and then criminally, well, first of all, refused to press charges for the assault, and then criminally trespassed me from the building. Absolutely shocking behavior from everyone involved.
Yeah, that is absolutely crazy when you think that you were just there to literally protest your property taxes. And obviously it shows the amount of fraud that is in the system. And I'm sure, Mitch, you can speak to that, the amount of fraud that's in the system in both the United States and Canada.
It is so criminal. It's beyond criminal. The total amount that we have discovered so far with regard to the outstanding school district bond fraud is 5.1 trillion across the United States.
Wow.
And that is made through the fraud that is committed at the central appraisal districts by property overvaluation, thus the overtaxation. But every single dollar that is raised via the fraud from the central appraisal district, which is in reality 83% controlled by the school districts, every single dollar is levered up 20 to 1. When you lever that up and you understand what's happening, so $1 million turns into 20 million, 100 million turns into 2 billion, and it keeps going and going. Well, the net result and the compound cumulative effect of the fraud, as seen in the compound interest calculator on my website, is top dead center at mockingbirdproperties.com/DCAD. What you will see in that one spreadsheet is exactly what is happening to the value of the houses. So the compound cost, the interest carry on top of the fraudulent debt is going parabolic. And when it goes parabolic, the exact opposite with regard to the living standard of every person that's viewing this is going down. That's what that chart is showing. So this was done on a school district called Godley, Texas, in Godley, Texas. And the bottom line is that an average house in Godley, Texas is $160,000 in value. The outstanding fraudulent school district bond debt is $120,000 per house. So when you begin to realize how bad this is, now the income isn't there, and that's the problem across the United States and across Canada. The income is not there. The median household income can never, and I put in the word never in bold and underlined, it can never be paid off. So it puts the federal government in a position, well, we have to cover off this fraud, so we'll just go and print the money to cover off the fraudulent bond debt, and never mind the interest carry that's necessary to carry the fraudulent bond debt. So you've got a compound circular argument of fraud. And that's what's spelled out on all these websites, including Jeff Mashburn's website. He's dealing with something similar on the solar fields, which in Canada, they've got the same problem with the solar fields. They got the same problem with the windmills. It requires government subsidies and subsidies through the school districts, etc. The bottom line is it's all fraud. None of this is real. None of this worked mathematically since its inception, including what the state of Texas has done by allowing the school districts to raise bonds. And what we're calling for now is the repeal of all property tax in favor of the uniform states sales tax, which will restore the balance sheet to mom and pop such that they own the land beneath their feet. And all the money will be there to cover off the school districts and the municipalities through the sales tax. We've got it all spelled out. We understand what it is. But in order to accomplish that task, we're having to file criminal complaints with the DOJ, the FBI, the SEC. The SEC is on it. We've spoken to them. So there's a lot of things that are happening under the hood. But the bottom line is that mom and pop are being ripped off, and it's compound cumulative. It's not just what they owe today that they cannot pay. It's what they owe tomorrow morning, which they cannot pay.
And I just want to show you as well, because people are realizing this, and you can probably both comment on this, but this is just a city in Canada called Calgary, and it's Calgary property assessments are getting insane. Somebody's got an assessment there for $640,000. But then when you go into some of these comments here, you've got people saying like, I filed a claim last year to lower it. They did a full assessment and I had to send in pictures of my house and everything, and I got it lowered significantly. significantly. This year I had a 15% increase. I called to ask why. The agent told me for some reason it should be 9%. So, I mean, this just sounds like they're just making up numbers.
Yeah, I mean, they are 100% making up numbers. I wanted to say also, Luke, I think it's really important to understand. Doesn't matter if you're in the U.S. Doesn't matter if you're in Canada. This is our civil rights battle of our generation. The software fraud is so out of control and it's so systemic. I mean, it hits Canada and U.S. the same. I mean, we're both governed by USPAP. And the problem is with the software allows them to subjectively create subcategories of value determination that doesn't follow property tax code. It doesn't follow USPAP, and you guys have CUSPAP in Canada. It's not following the law. It's not following the math. And when we bring this to the attention of the authorities, the problem is they protect each other. Mitch and I, with Mitch spearheading, have been able to prove pretty much so far out of 38 school districts that I've reviewed personally, I've only found 2 that didn't violate the existing 25% bond cap laws. So we've been turning in criminal complaints because we can show clear violations. But the problem is the DAs are refusing to prosecute and they're refusing to go after these people, citing to us that they just can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they're intentionally frauding us. And to give you an example, look, on just how bad it is in my own backyard here in Houston, Harris County. Okay, so we have a 25% bond cap law. This is a law. So that means that the school district can only ask for new bonds to service the debt, right? They're just servicing the debt. That's all they're doing. Of 25% of the existing total plus the cumulative interest, okay? So you can only go up 25%. In Harris County, they have roughly $2.5 billion in bond debt. They just asked in 2024. So again, you can only ask for 25% of the $2.5 billion. They don't care anymore. They're asking for $4.4 billion. Thank God it got shot down, but they're blowing past the 25% bond cap rate. The politicians aren't strong enough to do something about it. We've also gone to politicians that have promised us, Travis, Mitch, we're going to repeal property tax. We're going to abolish property tax. Huge civil rights violations here. But what happens, Luke, is the only thing I could think of is eventually they get burnt out because they understand that fighting for property taxes is fighting against the system. And if you fight against the system, your party, Republican, Democratic, they're going to turn their back on you and they're going to cut funding. So what happens is, and this is super heartbreaking, they quit and they implode and then they just go with the flow and they accept, you know what, maybe 5 years from now we'll handle it then, when the reality is we need it handled now because there are people going bankrupt and getting kicked out of their house right in front of our eyes. And some of these people getting kicked out of their house as a direct result of property tax, they're senior citizens and their entire house, Luke, is paid off. So they don't even have a mortgage. They got maybe $400,000 in equity, fake equity. It's not even real. It's just what they're being taxed on. So they paid off their whole house and they don't pay their property tax for a various reason, maybe surgery, whatever. The moment that they don't pay their property taxes, they're hit generally with a 25% fee. And if they don't pay that, the county almost immediately sells their defaulted property taxes to a pack of hungry wolves and predators that are investors purchasing tax liens, trying to purchase senior citizen homes for $1,000. That's what's going on right now.
And the last time I checked as well, in the United States and in Canada, taxing unrealized gains was not the law. I mean, that's right, isn't it, Mitch?
There's no such thing. Under the 16th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, you can tax an income. You cannot tax an unrealized gain. And that's why the entirety, since day one of its inception here in the state of Texas with regard to these property taxes, it was a failed concept coming out of the chute. Now, it works for the banks who loan and make the interest payment, the yield on their money for what they loan. But for everybody else, it is a straight ripoff. It is a crime. We've proven it. It's irrefutable. The evidence is on our websites. There is no way out. They are caught. So it's just a matter of, if necessary, and that is where we're headed. We are headed to the U.S. Supreme Court. They're going to have a really bad day because the dollar amounts are going to start adding up against the state of Texas shortly. And we're on our way to the Texas Supreme Court. Within the next couple of weeks, our document will be released. If they punt and don't allow this to be heard in the state of Texas, de facto, we win. And the reason why is because the state of Texas would have irrefutably proven by punting these cases that they have violated the Constitution of the state of Texas. Now the challenge becomes at the Supreme Court, which I believe Judge Gorsuch will be all over this, because I've already spoken to the attorney who argued on Chevron deference, not to mention the fact that I wrote one of the amendments for Chevron deference. But so I understand what's going on, but Judge Gorsuch will be all over this because of the simple fact that the state of Texas would have punted and violated their own Constitution. And then mathematically, with all the evidence that we've got and all the damage that we've got, this is a lay down case at the U.S. Supreme Court. All these people that are criminals, they're all going to lose. This whole system will come apart. And out of all of this, there's only a couple of depositions that I want, one of which is Don Spencer, who's the chief appraiser for the Central Appraisal District in Denton. And the other, although he's no longer the state comptroller, is Glenn Hagar. I want those two depositions, and this entire house of cards across the United States will come down. It's over. So what you are witnessing is a Ponzi scheme of biblical proportions. When you continue to rip off the public and say, well, we need money based on a predetermined budget that has nothing to do with uniform standards of professional appraisal practice, and you raise that money to pay the interest on the fraudulent outstanding bond debt and not pay that bond debt down, by definition, that's a Ponzi scheme. And I am most certain that Judge Gorsuch is not going to be happy when they see this case coming. He's going to take one look at this and say it appears in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. This case rolls forward.
Wow. Is there anything that you want to add to that, Travis?
Well, I want to make a point that, through working with Mitch, Mitch has spearheaded this. He's been working on this, I think, for 6 years. Without his involvement, I would be on still like level 2. I feel like I'm on level 100 right now. And I think it's important to understand that the software that they're using is just propaganda. The software that they're using, Luke, is the ultimate floor for housing prices. So a lot of people are wondering, like, oh my God, PE ratios, it's a double, triple bubble. Like, how are home prices not going down? Which, by the way, they are going down depending on the market. But the software that they're using is the ultimate floor for prices because the CAD overvalues the houses. Okay. Zillow, who over 200 million people use to determine the value of their houses, uses CAD value to determine what's called a Zestimate. So it's a whole interlinked thing that starts with the software. And again, the software manufacturers, I'm not going to use any names here, it's also propaganda because part of the way that they're selling the software to the central appraisal districts, which use different software, is they sell it by saying that it adheres to USPAP and it adheres to Texas property tax code. But the problem, Luke, is it doesn't adhere to any law. It doesn't adhere to USPAP. There's no uniform and equal. They're just picking properties, changing little levers on there illegally, fraudulently, and they're messing it up for every single person. Look at home sales. Over the last 4 years, home sales it's been an absolute dumpster fire. How many homes have really sold? 15 million? Well, we got 144 million. So the rest of the 130 million homeowners are now paying a price for the small amount of people who have recently transacted in the housing market. But the reason it's so systemic is that software is a plague. That they need to stop automating the value system because they're playing with the levers in there. In other words, it gives them the ability to do whatever they want. In other words, there's no transparency and there's no accountability built in the software. The software should be triggering certain violations like 10, 15% net adjustments, whatever it is, but it's not. And so when you go in and you ask the CAD these questions, again, you see what happens. They bully you, they push you out, they yell at you, they try to make you nervous. And the craziest thing, Luke, I only got 15 minutes. That's it. And it's not a full 15 minutes because you got to let them talk first. They interrupt you. So by the time it's all, everything is said and done, I got about 10 minutes to present. It is impossible. It is impossible for mom and pop to properly know how to govern this entire process with only 15 minutes and dealing with a bunch of tyrants and thugs. This is what's happening in every single county around the United States of America. And it's infected its way systemically everywhere. This is an absolute tragedy. We need to step up as a people. We need to understand we got to come together. This is a massive civil rights violation and we got to step up and we have to repeal property tax now.
So is this kind of what's happening in Florida right now and the reason why they're trying to abolish property taxes and change the sales tax?
So Governor DeSantis made that comment that's about a month ago now, and I happen to know what's going on behind the scenes and I happen to know who planted that seed because I'm speaking with them. But he got it wrong. I believe the governor is right in his statement, well, we have to abolish the real estate tax in Florida. And that statement keeps coming up, but they're not finishing the statement. The statement is repeal all property tax in favor of the uniform states, as in multiple states, sales tax. It's not complex. That's the statement. I don't believe that any state would want to not have that sales tax. But what we're saying is, and we've given the math, it's on the website, it's proven that if you have a 15% sales tax for 3 years, now this is state of Texas and it's got bad debts, et cetera, but just run with it. The state of Texas is 15% for 3 years. At the end of 3 years upon stabilization, it will drop down to 11 or 12%. But what you're accomplishing through that is the elimination of the outstanding fraudulent school district bond debt of roughly $660 billion in the state of Texas, the bankruptcy of any school district that cannot pay off its bonds within those 3 years. So all that debt is gone, and the balance sheet of mom and pop is restored such that they own the land beneath their feet, meaning that the amortization schedule is now working in their favor, whereas right now today it's actually working in reverse because the real estate tax is stripping out the equity that they've built up. So it's the combination, but the point is, with regard to Florida and DeSantis, he said half the statement. He's got to say the entirety of the statement, and by repealing all property tax in favor of the uniform state sales tax, the dream of home ownership, which is the American dream, is also the same dream in Canada, gets to survive. On its current trajectory, unfortunately, you can only push mom and pop so far, and you end up in a problem called the War of 1776. If you go back and study history, and we just literally this week put a whole section up on the writings of Thomas Paine on my website, I cannot think of a better definition of the word clairvoyant, because what he described 250 years ago is exactly where we are today. And it was Thomas Paine who was writing articles and letters to George Washington, and George Washington, in his eloquent formulas, turned it around and turned it into the U.S. Constitution. So the history is clear as to what happened. The United States of America became United States of America as a direct result of the War of 1776, which was over taxation, basically without representation, which was their tagline. But in essence, that's what you now have. You are equity stripping mom and pop, and it's going to blow up. It will blow up and implode under its own weight, or mom and pop at some point will say we've had enough, and they will take matters in their own hands. And you've got a bigger problem in Canada. So you've got the Canadian Bar Association, which may and or may not be crooked, may and or may not be completely ignorant. But the bottom line is, this is law plus math and plus USPAP, Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, or in Canada, C as in Canadian, USPAP. That's the formula. And these attorneys that go in and argue values based on the law are literally missing 70% of the equation. They're arguing with both hands tied behind their back. You've got to use the law, you've got to use USPAP, and you've got to use the math. And they have failed. And that hurts mom and pop in Canada. So in reality, mom and pop is in worse shape in Canada. And that's why you've got the debt load that the Canadian government has created. It's worse than that of the United States. And I left Canada, right? I got here in 1990 in Dallas over this exact issue. A guy like me didn't fit in, and a guy like me wasn't going to pay 75% net effective on my taxes. I know better. I left. Now, miraculously, through the debt load and the interest on the debt, here we are all over again.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy, Mitch, when you put it like that. And is it just because you have, like, obviously US PAP in the United States and CUS PAP in Canada, and basically all these appraisal districts are just not adhering to any of these guidelines? They're just essentially making it up as they go along, or using these fraudulent calculations. There's softwares, as Travis pointed out, that are essentially creating these values almost out of thin air, and are just, they should have different things built into these softwares to actually say, hey, no, you can't do this, you can't increase by 15-20%. I mean, is a 15-20% really going to happen if you're actually looking at the standard? Would that be allowed to happen and fall within the standards?
No, what you're dealing with in reality is compound cumulative fraud. So if you go back when I first realized there was a problem in 2016, in 2017, we were able to obtain the certified tax roll. And every year in Denton County, we've been A, suing, B, studying that certified tax roll, C, proven that the inflation rate as established by the U.S. census.gov at roughly 2.7%, how do you justify 27, 40, 60, 80% increases above the 2.7% inflation factor? The answer is you can't. However, it gets worse. So let's go to 2016 when we knew there was a problem. The difference between 2016 and 2017, let's call that a 12% delta. Now let's go to 2017 to 2018, a 30% delta increase in price. So you see all of a sudden you're going year to year to year on compound cumulative fraud. And the net result, when Don Spencer stood up in front of the board and said he took, which he didn't really, it was Rebecca Townsend who works for him, but they took 60,000 properties outside of the database, manipulated them in Excel, his words, and put them back. I have what's called an infection rate spreadsheet. I took the numbers, studied the numbers, on the spot proved that the database at that time was roughly 76% corrupt. But then I thought, wait a minute, these people lie all the time. What if he lied? There's 500,000 property accounts in Denton County. Let's just go from the 60,000 to the 80,000. Within 15 minutes, it became clear the database at that point in time was 92% corrupt. So Luke, to your point, the data is absolutely, irrefutably corrupt. They don't even know what the truth is. They can't get there because you'd have to back down all this compound cumulative fraud that has occurred on the overvaluation and thus the overtaxation. They may as well not have a software. And to your point, yes, they are irrefutably guessing. And yes, that is an irrefutable crime. That's a financial crime against humanity. Here in the United States, you've got civil rights violations. It goes against due process, 5th and 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. It violates the First Amendment under free speech. It violates the 16th Amendment because you can't tax it in the first place. And in Canada, they've made such an abomination of it. It's worse because your attorneys don't have the mental capacity, as in understand the math. Go and study USPAP. But when they show up to argue the values, the attorneys are dead nuts wrong. They don't know what's coming out of their mouth. They think, well, we can argue this on the law. Yeah, no, you can't. You've proven you can't. You're failing. And I don't know if that's the fault of the Canadian bar. I'm not really sure. I just know the net results. Those attorneys are failing.
And when you see a lot of these assessments as well, like 10, 15, 20%, they say inflation is running at 2, 3%. Like, doesn't that kind of also show that inflation is way understated as well? Because you're seeing the compound cumulative effect of the fraud in the inflation numbers as well that's happened pretty much since the 1990s, since the Fed and the Bank of Canada started getting targeted with this 2% goal. It seems that the basket of goods and the manipulation of the CPI has just gone completely crazy. Do you know anything about that, Mitch?
Well, just a little. So I wrote an article called CPI, the Big Lie. And if you go to my website, it's searchable. So you can just simply search. It's under articles. CPI, the Big Lie. And Travis has been studying this recently as well. Like the last 2 weeks has been an out-and-out whirlwind on this exact topic. The sets of data that are coming out from the federal government, and it's not just this administration. This administration is trying to correct it, but it's built in fraud on behalf of these governments, including the Federal Reserve itself. So they put out propaganda. This is not data. This is not sets of data. This is just utter nonsense coming out from these entities. But to your point, Luke, if you simply said, okay, it's not 2.7, let's run with 7% inflation. How do you justify the difference between 27% increase between 2016 and 2017? And at that time, inflation was only running, in reality, pretty close to that 2.7%. So you see, if you're up 10x on an annual basis above whatever number you choose in terms of inflation, there is no justification, and that proves the systemic fraud. And one other point that I want to raise is that, do you realize it's not just one software company? Here in Texas, there's 5 different software companies providing data software to these central appraisal districts. And they advertise blatantly, we will modify this software to do what it is you, the central appraisal districts, need done. That's the crime. How is it that you think that a software company even has read USPAP? We've got evidence that the chief appraisers themselves, I believe there's about to be an indictment coming down out of Johnson County on a chief appraiser, ex-chief appraiser, who never read USPAP. What makes you think that the software companies read it or understood it? Now, I've had the unfortunate pleasure of having to reverse engineer USPAP. We created the spreadsheets of what USPAP is all about, and that's how we started finding the problems. That's what I've done for my entire career in reality is reverse engineer things. Well, that's what we did. And that's how we figured out how these crimes are being committed. We backed all the way down. Bottom line is that the central appraisal district are using software that is purely cooked, does not conform to the law, does not have checks and balances, and mom and pop are being hit around like a ping pong ball because they can't defend against it because the central appraisal districts lie. You walk in and try to cross-examine them, and Travis is the out and out proof. They had every excuse under the sun. Well, we did this because of this. We did this because of that. And then Travis, just on his video that he did 2 days ago, said, where's that written? Where's that law? Oh, well, we don't have that.
So my question is what, like internally, what math do you use to determine what to change the effect of your bill to?
It's a review of the sale.
Is there, what do you mean?
So as a home is updated, it is given additional life and therefore a new effective age.
Mm-hmm. Do you have, like, is there, like, if I go online or can I request like the math for that, right? Because you can't just, do you just create that out of thin air, or is there like a formula used to determine that?
There is somewhat of a formula. It is more subjective.
Okay.
Though.
So there's not a boilerplate formula. It's more of a subjective, meaning that you could just change it.
That central appraisal district hasn't got a clue what Travis just did to them. He got them to tell the truth, but when they confessed, that's when things get really interesting. And that's going to be one of the exhibits in these upcoming lawsuits.
So, Travis, how did it feel to go up against the appraisal district as you've done, and you did it successfully because you managed to get your property taxes reduced? So how did it feel? Because obviously the first time, and you guys, you've got to check out the video. I'll link Mitch's website, Travis's channel. I know many of you are subscribed to Travis anyway, but I'm going to put all the links in the description, and also the 2 links to the videos from Travis's channel where he actually goes into an ARB hearing and he films the whole thing. And the first one, I mean, is just polar opposite compared to the second one. And obviously there was some news coverage in between that. So talk a little bit about your experience.
Okay, well, it was like dealing with the mafia. It felt like getting assaulted and battered. They wanted to make me feel stupid, and they wanted to run me over, and they wanted me to quit. And it was actually 3 hearings that I had. So, I mean, it feels like the mafia. And even though, and this was, I think, 2 days ago, I came in again, presenting my evidence. We had to go on the media. The county judge responded because they had a criminal trespass. So we got that removed. But all of that to go and just have them adhere to my rights, I was able to get a little over $50,000 off of my assessment. But here's the problem, Luke. It's not a real victory for the people. They gave me the $50,000 off, yes, because they should have. I still will say it's overvalued, but they did it to get rid of me. And by doing that, it doesn't solve the root of the problem. The only way to solve the root of the problem is, number one, it starts with the education of normal mom and pops in that county. And so I'm trying to build off of what happened. Like, hey guys, they assault and battered me and criminal trespassed me because I told the truth, and I asked them to tell the truth as well. And when you ask someone to tell the truth and that's their response, then it's more evidence that there's something bad that's going on behind their walls. And another problem is they're using the data and the software as propaganda. And I think it's really important that the viewers understand that what we're saying is factual. It is not a myth. It's not a theory.
I want to thank Printify for sponsoring today's video. If you're interested in them, then please check out the link in the pinned comment and the description.